Welcome back to the Team to Beat Miami Heat podcast, your one-stop shop for daily Miami Heat content. My name is Amir. Got a special episode for you guys today. I got Matt and Major back on the show joining me today. How are you guys doing? Thanks for joining.
Doing great. Doing great.
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How about you guys? Or how about yourself, man?
I'm pumped. I mean, Lakers, Heat last night, the Miami Heat won by 41 points, and I hate the Lakers more than any other franchise across any sport. So super pumped that the Miami Heat were able to win, but win in that fashion was huge. And we're back to 500, which is great. We're 10-10. It's been a mediocre season thus far and a pretty average season. We're 10-10. We're literally as average as you can be. We're seventh in the East, which is surprising at 10-10. What surprised me more is the Hawks are ahead of us, which pisses me off. But again, it's only the 20 game mark. But the biggest cliche that Pat Riley says, that Ethan says, from the 5 Reasons Network, and all these analysts say, like, the barometer of how a team will be perhaps in a season should be based after the 20 game mark. And we'll see how this Miami Heat team will perform moving forward. But it hasn't been exciting. It hasn't been great. We've been relatively healthy, minus Jimmy missing 5 games. But what's frustrating me personally with this 10-10 start is our offensive rating. I know there's different ratings based on different websites, but according to NBA.com, we are 11th, which is crazy. Like last year, we were 21st, I think, by the end of the year. But most of the year, we were like 23, 24, 25, top 5 in defense. Right now, we've kind of slid in the defensive side. We're 12th. We're 12th in offensive rating, 11th in defensive rating. That's according to NBA.com. So we've slid a little bit defensively, but we jumped up massively compared to last year in the offensive side. But yet we're still here at 10-10, which is kind of crazy, right? So I don't know who wants to jump in first, but what are your guys' thoughts at this point of the season after 20 games, 10-10? What's like your outlook for the remainder of the season? Let's go, Matt.
To me, it's been painfully mediocre so far. Like it's because it feels like we're watching the same song and dance that we've been watching for 3-4 years. And it's even funny, like how you mentioned offensive rating, defensive rating. Heading into last night, before they put up 134 points on the Lakers and had by far their best offensive game of the season, they were 20th in offense. Like they took a steep climb up the offensive rating chart heading into that game. And like the offensive process, I don't think has been great this season. Obviously, it's well documented how bad they are around the rim and near the rim. Like obviously Bam's at the head of that with just, his touch has just been off this entire year, especially when you're talking about like within 10 feet of the basket. Terry hasn't been great. Kevin Love has struggled when he's been playing. Jaime Jaquez has struggled a little bit when he's been out there, even though he kind of looks physically compromised. Like to me, they are 10-10, but it just feels like they should be like 7-13 or something like that. They're not, thankfully. But it just feels like it feels so painfully mediocre for the most part on a night-to-night basis. And I don't know if it's going to continue that way. Hopefully they're able to get that hot. They haven't been 2 games above 500 the entire season. They haven't won 3 straight all season. They've gotten close a couple of times, but they've just been on the wrong end of some unfortunate finishes. They haven't beaten good teams consistently. That's been a problem for now 2 years. I'm not sure if we consider the Lakers a good team. I don't. But they haven't beaten good teams consistently outside of maybe like Dallas this year. It's just been a difficult trek on a game by game basis. And I maybe they figure it out, maybe they don't, but just through 20 games, it hasn't been the most enjoyable experience from a fan perspective. And then when you're evaluating it, it just feels like you're sitting middle of the pack and practically everything, or at least it feels like it, without much direction.
It's funny that you mentioned that too, because we totally could be 7-13, but we could also totally be 13-7 with the
True.
games against the Bucks, the Suns, the Kings, and
Detroit.
Detroit, whoever else, Toronto. Like, there's just so many, especially like that one week where it came down to the last possession where Spo called a timeout against Detroit, and where Terry shot the 25-footer. War against the Suns where he didn't even get a shot off. Like, it's been super frustrating. But with all that said, as Major is going to jump in after last night's win, even though it was against the Lakers, I'm assuming Major is going to say we're back, and he thinks that we're contenders, and that Tyler Hero is going to be most improved and an All-Star this season. But anyway, Major, what are your thoughts after that the 10-10 start?
Yeah, I mean, Matt pretty much hit it on the head. The only thing I want to add to what Matt's saying is, and Amir, you kind of alluded to it, we could very easily have a much better record. Unfortunately, it's a 48-minute game, right? If we could just choose to cut out one quarter, we might have won 5 more games. Like, the fact that their third quarters are so bad, and it's improving, it's definitely improved, but especially at the start of the season, they would dominate teams or at least be in the game for 3 of the 4 quarters. And this is a very Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals outlook, but it's like they would consistently have double-digit leads or be right in there and then lose the third quarter by like 15, 20 points, and that's the whole game. And they would battle back in the fourth to make it somewhat competitive. So, yes, it's been a very frustrating 20 games, and it's the end result, all that matters, wins and losses. That's all that matters, right? The way they've gotten there can either, if you're a positive person, give you a little bit of hope, right? Bam's missing layups. The whole team's missing layups. I was pulling up the stat while Matt was talking about that. They are 27th in field goal percent on layups. How is that possible? And the putback field goal percentage, 30th at 31%. How is your putback 31%? Like, the fact of the matter is, a lot of things are going how the Heat, if you would have told them at the start of the season, that's how you want it. They just have several very big flaws, at least at the moment, that are really holding them back and have cost them 5, 6, 7 games even. Like, they make free throws how they have their whole career. They've won a couple more. They don't just suck in the third quarter at like not even. Let me backtrack. They can suck in the third quarter, just not historically bad, and they win a couple more games. Like, there's so many things like that. And then you have Bam, like I mentioned, you're 10-10 and you're surviving in the East, and Bam's played the worst offense he's played in how many years. He's just missing way too many open shots. So if I want to be a real homer here and be like, well, once Bam starts making wide open shots, or anyone, Terry starts making layups, Tyler even missed a couple layups, Jimmy missed a layup or two, like, they just start making those shots that are not unreasonable to expect they make, this could skyrocket, right? Then to their offensive rating, I think it's a little deceptive because they did just absolutely murder the Lakers and, like Matt said, jumped up a ton. It's better offense compared to the rest of the league than it was last year. And their three-point shooting is tops of the league, like top 5, I believe. But it's that layups and that 2-point percentage that is like unfathomably bad, that I can't believe other teams are worse than them, because these are professional basketball players that are really holding you back.
Yeah. So my question, Major, kind of a sidetrack question, because you are, again, I am more of an optimistic Heat fan. You're the most optimistic Heat fan for sure. But I do criticize. Like, I am a realist at times too, and a lot of Heat fans, and I've seen you say this in the past, in recent past, like, wait till the playoffs. Like, that whole mantra of like, we're a playoff team, not a regular season team. So like, what makes you think that things can change in the playoffs, like based on the trajectory of us struggling at the rim, struggling in these third quarters, struggling at defensively? Like, we've been pretty bad. Like, that's our identity. And we haven't had many complete defensive games like last night. We had a complete, amazing defensive game all around. Offensively, like, we played really great as well. But I don't know, for those Heat fans that say wait to the playoffs, like, what gives you optimism? Like, do you still think that's even possible, that we could still say that Jimmy is saving it for the playoffs so that we could figure this out in the playoffs and make a deep run if healthy. Because right now, availability was always the issue from what Pat was saying and why we've been running it back again for the 5th and 6th time in the last couple of years with the same, core build. Like right now, we've been relatively healthy. Like I know Jimmy's missed 5, but still he's played 15 out of 20 and Bam hasn't missed games. Tyler hasn't missed games. So why are we still struggling even though we are healthy?
Yeah, and I am the most optimistic of Heat fans, especially that, have
We know.
somewhat of a knowledge about the team. I'm sure there's guys out there that don't watch the games that are like even more optimistic than me. But I do try to criticize at times. I'm just anti over criticism. And I think that's where we've gotten as a Miami Heat fandom, to be honest. And the reason I say wait till the playoffs is because Pat Riley has a saying, playoffs tell. Also, I'm a firm believer, and I've said this ever since I started making basketball content. I strongly believe the reason the Heat don't falter in the playoffs like other teams, up until last year, the Celtics, by far usually the best team in the NBA or the East, and it got tight in playoff games. They would crumble. Even last year, they would crumble at the end of games or when things got tight. They just had such a big lead, right? And you saw that their whole playoff run. I'm a firm believer. All these clutch games, all this struggle, all of this quote unquote ugly basketball pays off in the playoffs. Spo has said it other times too, of not the exact words, but hey, basketball isn't won on paper. It's won in between these lines. And you want guys that are out there that are ready for war in between these lines. And come playoff time, the Heat, whether you like them or not, has a bunch of guys ready for war. And I'll preface this and end this with saying I picked them to lose in the second round this year. But I'm not saying that they're going to win the NBA championship, but there's something about this struggle, this mentality, the players they have, Jimmy, Bam, even, they don't have to improve in the playoff. Jimmy has. Bam, there's argument he's been worse offensively in the playoff than he has in regular season, especially his shooting. What changes is the other teams, they get that pressure. They also fall while the Miami Heat rise up in those little things. That is why I'm a very big wait till the playoffs guy. Would you rather be a really good regular season team or would you rather be a really good playoff team? We don't play to be the number 1 seed. You play to win titles and you play to go to the finals. And I know people are going to say we haven't won a title in forever, but we're always right there. They've earned the right. And I'm not saying they're going to do it, but I think they have earned the right, and Spo has earned the right to be like, you can't count them out if they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I agree with the Rileyism of playoffs do tell. And yes, we do for a team that does play average basketball during the regular season and the Jimmy Butler build have been able to pick it up in the playoffs. But in this build, we've ultimately not won the championship. So again, not one of those Heat fans that take the success for. I'm not taking it for granted because again, I don't want to be a poverty franchise, which 40% of the NBA teams have not even won a single championship. So the fact that we've won 3, we're in the top 10% of all NBA teams in terms of championships. There's 4 or 5 teams that have won 2 or more. And there's a bunch of teams that have won 1, but there's also like 15 teams that have not won a single championship. And so my issue though with not being a good regular season team or not the best regular season team and being a really good playoff team at the time, because again, defense tightens up, strategies change, injuries play a big factor every single year across the league with every single team. But I'm going to ask you this, Matt. How important do you think it is to be a top seed in the regular season? Because based on the data, and I always tweet this and mention this, if you're not a top 3 team in your conference, you don't win a championship, period. Basically, in the history of the NBA, 97% of all champions are top 3. 95% of those championships were from the 1 seed. Granted, there's only been 8 seeds in the playoffs since I think it was either 74 or 84. So either way, it's been 40 or 50 years since we've had 8 seeds. Like obviously back in the day when the Lakers and Boston Celtics won 20 championships when there was 9 teams, right? It was a little bit easier to a certain degree. But since the 70s or 80s when they introduced top 8 seeds, it's still the top 3 teams always win, with the outlier of the Houston Rockets as, I think, the 6th seed and the Boston Celtics as a 4 seed. So, Matt, do you think it's possible for the Miami Heat or any other team to not be good in the regular season and actually win a championship? Like, how important do you think it is in terms of being a top seed?
I don't think it's possible. And it goes back to like the Phil Jackson 40-20 rule. You win 40 games before you lose 20. And like, again, the majority of those teams actually are, top 2, top 3, top 4 seeds. It changes year to year. Like sometimes conferences are deeper than the others, but like the majority of those teams, win 50, 55, 60 plus games, even more than that in recent memory with like the Warriors dynasty. Obviously the Celtics last year, they won 80 combined games en route to their championship. Like, you need to be a top 10 defense. You need to be, at least nowadays, you need to be an elite level offense. You need to have like the functional size. You need to have the coaching, which Miami does. That's probably their biggest advantage. Everywhere else, they're pretty average, but they have the coaching. But you need all of that stuff in addition to some health luck. Like to your point, like yeah, injuries do play a part in all of this stuff every year. I've talked to Major about this before. I've probably mentioned it on here before. I say this a lot. Like, sometimes the NBA playoffs, it's not just who's the best on the basketball court. It's who's the healthiest. Like it's a health battle just as much as it is a basketball battle. Like that's the reality of the situation. If you're not healthy in the postseason, whether it's like your star players, a few role players, whatever the case is, your ceiling lowers, and it's harder to overperform and play above your head. And that's something that's really important, when you're talking about beating a team 4 times in a 7-game series. This isn't the NFL where it's like one bad game or one excellent game from you, and then you could advance to the next round. No, you got to beat a team 4 times in a 7-game series. And Miami was on the right side of that luck just a couple of years ago when they were playing way above their head. They beat Milwaukee in round 1 behind Jimmy just going complete ape on everyone. And then you beat the Knicks in a very hard-fought 6-game series, and then obviously you beat Boston right after you lead 3-0, and you do that behind Caleb Martin and Jimmy. Like, it's hard to beat a team 4 times in a 7-game series if you're at a disadvantage, whether it's home court advantage, whether you just don't have the personnel, whether you're not good offensively or defensively. Like, it's really, really hard, especially the later you get into the postseason. Like, I think, yeah, you do need to be a top 4 seed, a top 3 seed, a top 2 seed. Like, part of the reason why it's Miami's in the spot, they've been, toward the bottom of the East each of the last 2 years, and like you can only count on that luck so many times before it bites you in the butt. And like, you have to get to the postseason. Like, you still have to win these regular season games. Like we saw it last year with Jimmy. Jimmy underperformed in the regular season relative to his typical standard, and whether that, I mean, obviously the end of that season, he was dealing with some personal matters. And, but like, even like at the beginning of the season, like these games, yeah, it might be October, November, December, whatever month it is, like every game counts to some extent, because you might run into a situation where you are a play-in team again, and you still have to win these games, especially against good teams, or at least you have to go 500 against these good teams. To get over that hump and to be a top 6 seed and to put yourself in a more advantageous situation with who you're facing. And you still have to get to the postseason. So like, you can be a bad regular season team and be a great postseason team, but you still have to get to that place to begin with. And I'd rather just them be, I mean, obviously it's easier said than done, no doubt, but like, if you can be a great regular season team, yeah, you don't completely run out of gas by, March, April. Like, sometimes it does happen to certain teams, but like, I firmly believe, to your point, Mir, you have to be a really good regular season team to put yourself in the most favorable position to win a championship. And that's what matters in the end.
Yeah, you want to put yourself in the best seeding possible so you have the easiest matchups, so you don't get drained by the time you get to the Eastern Conference Final. You want to play the easy. You want to have the easiest matchups as possible. Hopefully, you're healthy. But switching gears, so because I don't want to think about the postseason right now because that's a long ways away. But let's talk on a positive note, which is a crazy note, that Tyler Herro, obviously a huge game against the Lakers, 7 threes in that third quarter at 31 points. But in general, he's looked like our best I'm going to say offensive player, maybe best player on the team, just the one that seems like he cares the most, has the biggest chip on his shoulder, even though he has that contract in place for the next couple of years. What are your guys' thoughts on Tyler Herro's play this season? Do you guys think he's actually going to make it as an all-star? Because right now he's played all 20 games, which is huge because he's never played more than 67 games in a season. So his two biggest knocks have been availability. So he's been available. The other one was inconsistency. And he showed slightly, I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago, where he had 3 games where he had like 17, 18, and 18, 3 consecutive games. And we're like, oh, here we go. He's regressing back to the mean. And he actually bounced back after that and has had multiple 30-point games, 25-point games. Like, he has shown that he's becoming more consistent. Like, those were kind of flukes thus far in this short sample size, but still, inconsistency was this huge issue. And also inefficient. Like, he's been more efficient. He's shooting lights out from 3. Do you think he can sustain that? Like, the health, who knows? He's had some freak injuries. I don't say he's injury prone. I think he's prone to injury, which is like a slight difference than someone who's like injured, like an Anthony Davis or Joel Embiid or Paul George, who are like perpetually injured. But he's shown he's been healthy, which is great. But he's also been efficient and consistent thus far. Every NBA player is going to have a dud here and there, but his duds were like before 8 points, 13 points, then 25, then 30, then 8, then 12. Right now, he's like consistently getting you 18 to 30 points. Like, that's a big range. But I don't know, Major, what are your thoughts on his play? And do you think it's sustainable? And do you think he actually will be an all-star this season?
I started last night on the post-game show for 5 reasons. I started the official Tyler Herro All-Star campaign. So I'm the president of Tyler Herro All-Star campaign. I think he needs to make it. Is he going to make it? The East, bad teams, really good guards. So if he was like a center or even a forward, I think he has a lot better shot. But there are a lot of really good guards. I think he deserves to make it. If the Heat are not in the play-in, so a top 6 seed, I think he'll make it. And it's aided by Jimmy, not been as bad as a lot of people want you to believe he has been. Bam, done everything but score. But Herro's the one that kind of pops out to a lot of people. So I think he is helped by that a little bit. Like, if Bam was averaging 25, 10, and 5, like, Bam would get it. But I don't think the Heat are going to have 2 All-Stars. And so I think it's shaping up to be a Tyler Herro year. As far as if he can continue this, I mean, I sure hope so. He's kind of changed his play style a little bit. Even though he's having big scoring nights and taking a lot of shots, they're, in my opinion, more inside the offense. It doesn't look like he's hijacking the offense. He's not taking near as many bad shots, near as many mid-range shots either. He'll take some occasionally, but it's not like him passing up threes to go take mid-range or trying to go one-on-one to take a mid-range shot. He's been taking it to the rack very strong, in my opinion, getting a little bit more free throws than he normally does when he attacks the rim. He's added some muscle that helps him. He used to be able to get knocked off ball real easily when he was driving. Now he can handle that. He's going up confidently. I love his game, how he's playing right now. And I tweeted this yesterday, and it just blows my mind the more I think about it. When's the last time you've ever seen a player, his whole fan base hates him? And I'm not, obviously there's outliers, but out of the fan base that you always hear about, the fan base hates Tyler Herro. They've begged him to be traded ever since his rookie year, right? They have begged him every time he's on the court to be benched and to not start. Do this less, do this less, do this. You have people saying he's not even a good player and they just would dump his contract, that he's a worthless. He has the worst contract in the NBA. There's all this stuff. When have you seen a guy deal with that and get better literally every single year to where now he's playing, even if he's an all-star or not, he's playing at all-star level, right? He's averaging over 20 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. And that's other things no one talks about. His passing has gotten a lot better. His decision-making, his rebounding has gotten better. Heck, even his defense has gotten better to where he doesn't feel like the worst defender on the court every single time. And he is actually battling. And I think that's some of his muscle I mentioned earlier. He's been a little bit more of a leader, it seems. He's talking more. All these things that I think points towards a guy. This is a legit leap. Even if he regresses a little bit, it's still, in my opinion, a legit leap. It's a guy that now fits better with some of the stars too. That was another thing. But his game now, threes and layups, and he's always been an amazing catch and shoot player. And he said he didn't even realize how good he was at that. Like, the stats always said it. He's embracing everything. There's not enough good things I could say about Tyler Herro because any question mark people had about him, he has answered. In 20 games, like, we're over here just saying, like, 20 games is how you know when a team's good. 20 games is also a lot of the time there's outliers. You know if a player's legit or not, right? Like, all these guys are NBA guys. They can have amazing 5 games, but 20, especially being the number one option and defense focusing you, I think it's pretty legit. He's probably due for a slight regression. He's probably not going to shoot like 47%, 45% from 3 all year on 8 attempts. But I think it's pretty legit. I think it's something that we can quote unquote count on. But to your point, is he going to be healthy? He's like the least injury prone, constant injury player because he broke his hand diving for a ball. He went up for a floater, landed on someone's foot. They're like freak injuries, not like something that you're like, oh, this is a problem. It's like something that happens every single game that somehow he's just gotten lucky with.
Well, the fact that he's not doing floaters anymore, I think, is a good thing. Is 8 3-point attempts per game, and the rest of his attempts are at the actual rim. Like, he's actually, it could be that strength. He's not focusing on that mid range, but he's also not doing that like dotted line floater, which he's been injured multiple times in his career. Last season against the Grizzlies, he's jumping up and landing on Triple J's foot or whoever it was. So I think that's going to be good as well. He eliminates the risk by doing that because now he's actually getting all the way to the cup. So he has obviously improved, which is great to see. We finally got our 24-point game per score, but like it hasn't translated because of other guys on the team, right? There's been other issues here. There's been regression from players like Jaime, slightly, Jimmy, slightly, like not too much, right? Like he's not washed, obviously, and he's doing the same thing as he normally does, where he tries hard in one game and the next he doesn't, and he's load managing in games and being passive. But Jimmy's fine at this age, averaging 19 points and doing what he's doing right now. I think he's fine. But Bam is the other person I wanted to bring up because he had a good game against the Lakers. He didn't need to shoot again after, I think he shot one shot in the second half because like I think he was 6 for 7 at half, 14 points, and he only took one field goal. But he looked good. He looked confident, which was frustrating because you're playing against Anthony Davis, one of the best defenders in the NBA, and you were playing against Nurkic, Podol, like a bunch of other guys. I don't even know, Luke Cornet, like whoever, like that you're not like taking advantage of. Not confident. Like we see Bam when he misses his shots, he puts his arms up like in the air, and he's like, he doesn't look to shoot, he looks to pass. We've seen that, but he seems to have had a quote unquote breakout game against the Lakers. But he is someone who we thought was going to take a leap, like Tyler, after the Olympics, adding that 3-point shot to his repertoire. And he hasn't been horrendous. Like he's still averaging 16 and 10. It's only 2 less field goals than what he's been averaging, 20 points per game the last 3 seasons. But I don't know. I don't know what it is with the field goal percentage. We talked about this earlier. You mentioned it. We're one of the worst teams in the paint. Like he's averaging 52% in the paint. League average is 59, 60%. That's not good. He's averaging 42% in general from the field, which is 10 or 11% less than what he did last year. But like he's never shot below 50% in his career. So obviously part of that is missing those bunnies at the rim. But it seems like he's regressed, Matt, and I don't know why. But do you see this as a slump within the first 20 games? Like, or do you think his percentages might get back now we have 60 games left, 62 games. Do you see him getting back up into like the 45-50% range, which effectively I think will get him back into that 20 points per game average, right? If he makes a couple more field goals. Do you think it's a slump, or do you see this as like a more concerning sign?
I see it more as a slump. I mean, sometimes there's the concern with some of the shots that he does take being like the tough contested twos and whatnot. But I think water will always find its level. And considering he's been, at least a 52% shooter really his entire career outside of his rookie season where he shot 51%, like I think he's more than capable of getting back to that 50% mark. Again, like you look at some of these shots that he's missing, and to Major's point earlier, like the putbacks, like all of the layups, like it's just to me his touch is off, and like to this point it's gotten to be like a mental game for him, like in game, like he's battling it. It feels like mentally, and so I think it'll get back to its level at some point. I don't know when exactly that will be, but like I'm not going to dismiss what I've seen from him over the last 5-6 years in terms of his ability to finish at the rim. The concerning part is his ability to get to the rim, but I still think like he's getting close enough to the basket and he's taking open enough shots like that he should be able to make him at a relative clip. He just hasn't yet, and I think that will correct itself over time.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's just a slump. I think he'll be fine. Obviously, he's still a really good player. Like it's very rare that a player that is as consistent as Bam suddenly consistently for a full season drops down 11 percentage points like on his field goal attempts. Like he's still good. Like he's obviously still like our best all-around player. We don't need him to be that effective on the offensive end, but if he can get back to that Bam where he is confident, shooting 50% from the field, averaging 19, 20 points per game, I think that's going to equate to winning those close games that we've been losing. We're always going to be a organization that plays in these clutch, frustrating games, but because of Tyler's leap, I think, and because we do have that depth and we're healthy right now, I think we will win some close games. But the frustrating part right now, as this mediocre team, we've been finding ways to lose games versus finding ways to win games. And real playoff contending teams figure out ways to win games and not lose these types of games, which has been super frustrating to start. But to close out, I know we have a tough schedule coming up. The next 6 games or so are going to be tough. We play the Raptors and Pistons, but we've lost to them both already in some heartbreaking games. But we play the Suns, who might be without KD. I think he's going to be out with that ankle injury. But then we play the Cavs, Raptors, Pistons, Thunder, then Magic. Magic have been sensational without their best player. How do you guys think we're going to pan out on this like next 6 games or so? Do you think we'll stay and hover around 500? Because I know this is kind of like a make it or break it kind of point in the season where if we want to avoid the play-in, we need to win at least we need to consistently be at least at 500 because the East is so weak at this point. So do you see us winning 4 out of the next 6, or do you think we're going to be like 2-4 or 3-3? Like, what's your guys' outlook? And we'll close there.
I got 4 wins. Raptors, Pistons, they're both going to win those. Magic, they're going to win that game. And then Suns without KD, they'll win.
What do you think, Matt?
I'm saying 2-4.
Hater.
I think they beat Toronto, and I think they beat Phoenix. I don't think they beat those other teams. Like home against Cleveland, I don't see it. Only the Hawks have figured out Cleveland. Boston's also beat them once, but the Hawks have. It's funny because the Hawks are 3-4 against Boston and Cleveland, and then they only have like 2 losses in like 40 games against everyone else. It's kind of funny. I don't think they beat the Thunder. I don't think they beat the Magic. I don't think they beat the Pistons on the road. It feels like the Pistons on the road, like whether it's the Heat win or Heat lose, it's always like a 5-point game. It feels like that's practically like every other Heat game anyway. So it's not that different. So I think it's Phoenix and Toronto are the teams that they beat. But I don't see them beating Cleveland, Detroit, Oklahoma City, or Orlando. on the road.
Yeah. I mean, we're a better road team than home team, it seems like. So
That's true.
I'm gonna go. I'll go in the middle. I'll go 3-3. We'll win against Toronto, Detroit, and maybe Suns, I would say, since KD's going to be out. So let's take the momentum from the Lakers game and hopefully beat the Suns. It's at home, right? So that should help possibly. I don't know. But yeah, I'll go 3-3 just to be different from you guys. But anyway, that's all I had for my questions and for the episode. So before we hop off, do you guys want to let the audience know about your guys' podcast and where they can find you online?
Yeah, me and Matt do a podcast together called The Force with Matt and Major, where we talk about the Sky Force, and we specifically talk about like the players, the two ways, the next upcoming people, and who did well in the games, and just news with that. Then the main place I am is just on Twitter, or now X, Major_Passons. That's Passons. You can find me there, and then littered throughout a bunch of 5 Reasons sports content on playback, post-game shows, just all that fun stuff.
What about you, Matt?
At NPH_824_, where you can see my terrible tweets or smart tweets, depending on your perspective of things. Major and I do co-host a Skyforce podcast where we pretty much just talk about Isaiah Stevens and Kashad Johnson for like 25 minutes.
What about Josh Christopher?
Yeah, Josh Christopher too sometimes. And then hothoops.com, vendettasportsmedia.com, mountainwestconnection.com, watchplayback.tv/5RSN, where you can find Major and myself talking, watching, and dissecting the Miami Heat on a game-by-game basis, whether how much they frustrate us or how much they make us laugh, how much they make us cry, smile, whatever the case is. You can see him and I over there too, talking everything Miami Heat and other NBA stuff. But yeah, man, I'm everywhere doing a lot of different things for a lot of different people, man.
Well, thank you guys so much. Hope you guys have a good one. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.